aboard. Once you have located your seat, we ask that you please step out of the aisle.
Well, good morning. Did you have to paddle in today? It was a little rainy out there. Hey, I'm glad you made it. We have been talking, even if you haven't been with us, we've been talking over the last several weeks, this idea, it's a very simple idea. You don't have to go to church. You don't have to be a Christian to understand it, that we all have baggage in our life. Right? We all have twisted ways of thinking where it's just kind of broken in our head, the way we think about things. We all have motives that honestly are pretty selfish and sometimes kind of ugly, and we don't want other people to really see them or know about them, but at the same time, we know that they're there. A lot of us deal with guilt, feelings like we're not measuring up or that we haven't made enough people happy, and we have all of this kind of baggage that comes into our lives, and listen, everybody has it. There's nobody that gets by on this. We all deal with it. And what we've been saying throughout this whole time is there is an answer to that God has actually done something to relieve us of this strain. And it's not about working harder. It's not about me, pulling myself up by my own bootstraps and doing better. It's not about those things. It's about one very simple Bible word. And again, even if you don't go to church, you've heard this before. It's a very simple word, but it has so much meaning. I can't unpack all of it this morning, but it's a very simple word, and that word is grace. God's grace. And if I could just kind of try to distill it to a simple explanation, a simple understanding of grace. Grace is this. Grace is God offering us life again. Even with all our baggage, even with our mistakes, even with our struggles and our frustrations, God comes along and says, I want to give you a new life. A better life, the life you were created to live. I want to give you that. That's what grace is. And that's what God gives to us to help us deal with all of our baggage. And so today, what we're going to talk about, not only is this idea of grace, we're going to talk about grace, but we're going to talk about some things that go with grace that frankly, doesn't seem like they go with grace. We're going to talk about responsibility and accountability. And as soon as I say that, some of you go, I don't like responsibility. I don't want to adult. I don't want to be responsible. Anytime something goes wrong, people say, who's responsible? I mean, nobody wants to be responsible. And accountability, that just sounds like another word for getting in trouble, right? I'm accountable means I'm in trouble. And so we have these negative connotations about responsibility and accountability, but they actually, even though they're a little heavier, even though they're a little harder maybe, they go together really well with grace, which feels like light and airy and kind of like, a second chance and somebody being nice to me. And we think those are separate, but the reality is they actually go together really, really well. So let's talk about these for just a second. Let's talk about responsibility. I read about something the other day that made me consider moving. I've lived in Phoenix my whole life, but when I read this, I thought, I may need to move to Pennsylvania. Because in Pennsylvania, there was a township that had raised taxes, okay? They had raised property taxes. And those of you that rent or don't own your own thing, you don't care. The rest of you, when you hear that, you're like, oh man, that's every month they're in my wallet. It's like they raised their property taxes, and they raised them pretty significantly because they had this big project that the city was trying to undertake. Well, as the year went through, they realized something. They were coming down to the end of the accounting year, and they totaled everything up, and they realized they actually took a whole lot more money in taxes than they needed. And they were kind of stuck with, well, what do we do with this? And, the cynics of you out there are probably just like me. You're thinking, well, they're going to keep it. I mean, they're not giving it back. They're going to do something with it. But the board of supervisors met, and they decided, no, we need to give it back. They gave back hundreds of thousands of dollars to 14,000 people that own property, homeowners and business owners and things like that. They gave them back their money. And they interviewed the board of supervisors person, and he said, well, why did you do that? And he said this, it was the responsible thing to do. We overcharged them, and we needed to pay them back. And see, we love it when other people are responsible, right? I mean, we love that. Hey, you're being responsible. That's good because it works out well for me. So I'm on board with that. We love when other people are responsible. And that's part of responsibility. But let's talk about accountability for a second. Have you ever heard of the Lawsuit Abuse Group? The Lawsuit Abuse Group. This is a group that started, some of you will remember this. Years ago, somebody bought a hot coffee from McDonald's, and they spilled it on themselves. And then they turned around and sued McDonald's for the hot coffee they bought that they spilled on themselves. They sued McDonald's for the hot coffee that they bought being hot because it burned them, right? And so used to be if you spilled coffee on yourself, you called yourself clumsy. Now you call a lawyer so that you can get paid. But this group started as a result of this. And what they did was they kind of run this silly contest every year for the most bizarre warning labels and most bizarre warnings that companies give so that they can shift accountability away from themselves to the user of the product. It's like, we don't want to be responsible for the quote unquote crazy, stupid stuff that other people might do. And so let me give you an example. Here was the 4th place winner. It was a fishing lure, a fishing lure. Most of you fish, you know what this is. It's a fishing lure. It's got 3 giant metal hooks on it. It's about 5 inches long, and they put a tag on it. Harmful if swallowed. Like, you think? I mean, this is just me. And I know sometimes I can be a little much, so I get that. If you're dumb enough to swallow that, you get what you get, right? I mean, that's just, you don't need a warning label. But they won number 4, and I thought they should have been first place. But first place was a product warning label, and it went on this thing of pesticides, which that makes sense, okay? Like, you don't want little kids or animals or something getting into chemicals and getting sick and all of that. But the way they put it on the label is like, we are not going to be accountable for anything. And so they put it this way. They put this warning label, the first place winner, and it says this: if you do not understand or cannot read all the directions, cautions, and warnings, do not use this product. If you cannot read, you cannot read the warning. I mean, it's just silliness sometimes when it comes to accountability. It's like we want anybody and everybody else to be responsible, somebody else to be accountable, just not me. Part of the reason for that is because we do have a lot of baggage. So we have some bad experiences. And if we're being really honest, we have some places and some times where we've just messed up. And we know it. And we don't like looking about it. We don't like looking at it. We don't like thinking about it. We don't like dealing with it. But that's where grace comes in. See, when grace comes, God says, I know, and I still want to give you another chance. And I still want you to have the life that I planned for you to live. And it's actually good for you to be responsible. And it's actually good for you to be accountable. When you're doing it in this life, when you've received the grace that God gives you, when you're walking with Him, this idea of responsibility and accountability suddenly becomes very attractive. And I know, like I said, we've kind of got built up stuff about, I don't want those things. I don't like those things. Those things sound hard. But when they're viewed through grace, which we're going to look at this morning, all of a sudden they become very desirable. And it allows us to say something. It allows us to say something. We are responsible. You and me, we are responsible, and I am accountable. And that's a good thing. Grace allows us to say that. And I love it about this, that it's we, it's you and me. It's not them people or those people or that company or this group. It's you and me. It's the people who follow Jesus. We are responsible. And you've heard me say this if you've been around Mountain Ridge. Church, it's not a name. It's not a building. It's not a brand. It's not an institution. Church is you and me. Us two, us three, us four, us five. We are the church. And we are responsible. And not only are we responsible, I am and you are accountable. It works together and it works individually. So let's take a look at this. If you've got a Bible, we're in Galatians chapter 6. And in Galatians 6, Paul, this is just my opinion, okay? Paul does something kind of interesting. The guy that wrote the letter, he wrote it to his friends that lived in this region called Galatia. And when he wrote this letter to them, the first 5 chapters are actually very clinical almost. Like there's this separation. It's almost like teacher and student, like professionalism. Like he's just kind of telling them, hey, you need to do this, you need to do that, this has changed, this is different, and you need to be aware of this. It's almost kind of not standoffish, but it's not very personal. But when he gets to chapter 6, it becomes very, very personal. The language he uses changes. And he says, in essence, he says, listen, we're family. We need to take care of each other. And he says, in this best sense of this idea of being responsible, being accountable, we need to treat each other like family. So let's look at what he says. Galatians chapter 6, verse 1. Brothers and sisters, I mean, right out of the gate, he's using different terms. Brothers and sisters, if someone is caught in a sin, you who live by the Spirit should restore that person gently. But watch yourselves, or you may also be tempted. Carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. If anyone thinks they are something when they are not, they deceive themselves. And this is my summary of this. He's saying we are responsible. That because of the relationship that we have with each other, We are responsible to each other, and we are responsible for each other. And I want to break this down in just a minute and what this would look like in my life and how it would impact you. But we are responsible. And the reason he says it is because it's just like family. I mean, if somebody in your family is running off the rails, you're not going to just shrug your shoulders and cross your fingers. I mean, you're going to be involved. You care. You love them. You want what's best for them. You're going to involve and invest yourself in their life. And he's saying, as followers of Jesus, we have that same kind of relationship with each other. That when it comes to each other, our responsibility is for us to look at one another and say, hey, I need to check them out. I need to check them out. What is going on in their life? Because what happens is, sooner or later, happens to all of us, we're going to do exactly what he said. So we're going to fall into sin. And the language he uses, it's like falling into a spider's web. We kind of get distracted, we get a little turned around, and we kind of get caught, and then we feel a little bound up, and we start to struggle, and we start to strain and kick, and we just get more tangled up, and before we know it, we feel trapped. We feel stuck. And he says, listen, guys, we're responsible for each other. We need to check them out. How are they doing? Are they caught? Are they doing well? What's happening in their life? What is going on? And he says it this way. In some translations, in mine, he says, those of you who are in the Spirit. Others, it may say, those of you who are mature should restore them. And I got to be honest, when I read that, my first thought was, whew, because I'm not mature, so I don't have to worry about that part. You know, that's for those people, right? That's for the really smart people, the really godly people. I mean, the mature people, that's their job, is to be responsible and help restore us. Do you know what spiritual maturity is? I mean, a lot of times we get a wrong picture of it. I mean, spiritual maturity, and some of us, the first thing I think a lot of us think of is, well, that's somebody that's, older, wiser. Somebody that's gone down the road a little bit further than me. It's just, you have to be old to be spiritually mature. And you know what old is, by the way? Old is 15 to 20 years older than whatever you happen to be, right? If you're 25, old is 40. If you're 40, 55, 60 is old. If you're 55 or 60, 70 is old. If you're 70, you're just old. You can't really go any further than that. I mean, you can't pretend at 70. It's like you just are. It's not age. Spiritual maturity is not tied to your age. So, okay, well, then maybe it's, like intelligence and smarts. I mean, maybe people that are really smart, that got some degrees and gone to school and read books and stuff like that. I mean, maybe they're the ones that are spiritually mature. No, spiritual maturity actually has very little to do with intelligence. Well, maybe it's the people that have gone to church a long time and read the Bible a lot and been in a lot of Bible classes and, they have all these big words and Bible terms and they know all the stories and maybe that's spiritual maturity. No. I mean, knowing the Bible is a great thing, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't necessarily mean somebody is spiritually mature. You know what spiritual maturity is? Spiritual maturity, walking in the Spirit like he talked about, is very simple. I follow God and I do what God says. That's spiritual maturity. So good news, bad news, every one of you can be spiritually mature. This isn't an age thing. It's not an intelligence thing. It's not an experience thing. Bad news is we are all then responsible, right? Because anybody can do this. I follow God and I do what God says. And if I do that, I am spiritually mature. And so now, therefore, I am responsible. Responsible for what's going on in your life. And you're responsible for what's going on in my life. We need to pay attention. We check each other out. And if we see somebody struggling, and put it in terms of the baggage. We see somebody that's just carrying too much and they're going the wrong direction and we see it and we know it. The words they say, the attitudes they have, the choices they're making, it's like you're on the wrong track. You're moving away from God, not towards God, and I am concerned about you. We have a responsibility to restore them, to bring them back. And so let me make it personal for a second. Let's say it's me. And I'm giving you permission. I'm asking you. I want to be responsible to you. I want you to be responsible to me. Hey, Brett, the words I hear coming out of your mouth, that seems like you're moving away from God, not towards God. The way you're treating your spouse and your family, I think you're on the wrong track, man. I'm concerned for you. Hey, the attitude you showed, it was really divisive and ugly, and you kind of wrote that person off, and it seemed like you were almost, angry or hateful towards them. And I know that's not who you want to be. I'm asking you to help me be responsible because we are responsible to each other. And I know that seems awkward and like, I don't want to have that conversation. I don't want to tell somebody that. I mean, who am I? And that leads right into how do we restore? How do we actually restore somebody? We see somebody caught in this. We see somebody heading the wrong direction. The words they're saying, the things they're doing, the choices they're making, we're like, hey, they're moving away from God, not towards God. What should I do? Well, the first thing you do is you don't ignore them. You don't ignore them, because that's my go-to, right? It's like I see it, but I don't want to get involved. I got enough stuff on my own. I don't really think that's my place. And, I know them, and they'll probably figure it out. I mean, it's a rough spot. They'll be okay, and it's not really a big deal. And I don't want to. It feels kind of icky, and I don't think I can put myself in that spot. See, that's not being responsible. That's not restoring someone. The second thing we don't do is we don't highlight them. We don't talk to everybody else about the problems we see in their life, right? Did you hear what he said? Did you see what she did? Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't have done that. I'm just saying, it's not me. I mean, we point out what everybody else is doing wrong to everyone but them. So we don't ignore them and we don't highlight them. What we do is we restore them. We restore them. And this word it's a beautiful word. It means, it's a medical term that Paul uses here. It's a medical term that means to gently reset a broken bone. Because you can reset a broken bone and not do it gently, right? You've seen it on TV. Here, grab a hold of that. Hold on. We're going to put it back. No. To gently reset something that's broken. That's what it means to restore. So what does that look like when it comes to sin? Very, very simple. When you see me struggling, caught in a web, wobbling under all the baggage of my life, and heading in the wrong direction, what you do is you come alongside me. And you say, Brett, I see this in your life, and I'm concerned for you, man. Are you doing okay? Because it seems like, and I may be misunderstanding, but it seems like God's over here and you're moving over there. Is that what's happening? And you give me an opportunity to be confronted with the sin in my life, which then gives me an opportunity to confess it. You're right. That's not who I want to be. That's not the attitude I want to have. That's not the way I want to treat people. You are right. And not only have I been confronted with a sin, I get a chance to confess that sin. And then I repent. I'm not going to be like that anymore. That's not the direction I'm going to go. And it puts me right back in the spot where I'm receiving God's grace again. You see how responsibility works with grace. It brings us in and it allows us to speak into each other's lives. It allows us to make a change. But the order here is so important. Because Paul says when you see that guy wobbling underneath the huge burden, don't just watch them fall. You should go and help them carry their burden. But it's after you restore them. You see, first we restore and then we relieve. Let's take the example of the broken leg for just a second. I'm here, I got a broken leg. You could do a lot of things for me. You really could. You could help me prop my leg up. You could maybe give me some aspirin or some painkillers or things like that. And, all kinds of stuff's available to help you feel better. You could take the stuff I was carrying and carrying it for me. If you were strong enough and I need to get across, you might be able to pick me up and take me over there. You could give me a wheelchair. You could do all of these things to relieve me, but have you really helped me? No, because my leg's still broken and it hasn't been reset and it can't heal. See, first we restore. We are for each other. We are responsible to each other. And that even means dealing with the baggage and the sin that we have in our lives. First, we restore so that we can heal. And then we relieve. Then we help. Then we lighten the load. And again, the broken leg example. Let's get this set. Let's get this restored. Let's get what is broken, healed, and corrected. And now I'm going to help you. I'm going to walk with you. And you know what? You need to go a little slower because you got a limp? No problem. You can't carry your stuff because of your leg? No problem. I'll carry it for you. You need to rest on my shoulder? No problem. I'm happy to stay here and help you. That's what Paul's saying. First we restore. Then we bring relief because we're responsible for each other. When we get it out of order, here's what happens. It's like digging a hole and you find yourself in the bottom of the hole and you decide, I'm going to get out of the hole by keep digging. It doesn't work, right? It's the same as treating the symptoms of a disease instead of treating the disease. Why does my marriage not work? I mean, people are nice to me and I talk to the counselor and I try harder and I do better and I never deal with the core issue and my marriage never keeps getting better. I have relief, but I've never been healed. Why does my anger keep flashing and destroying relationships and keep cutting people off and keep causing me to say things I don't really mean? And I try to do better and people tell me that it's okay and that they forgive me, but I never deal with what's broken inside me, well, guess what? The marriage, the relationship, the other problems, whatever it is, if you don't deal with what's broken, it doesn't matter how much relief you get, it will never get fixed. The only way to fix it is to gently reset and restore so that you can heal, so that then the relief actually makes it better. The grace that God brings into your life allows you to move forward. See, we are responsible for each other. But not only are we responsible, we're accountable. Paul talks about that next in verse 4. Look at verse 4. He says it this way. He says, each one should test their own actions. Then they can take pride in themselves alone without comparing themselves to someone else. It's not about how I compare to everybody else. Verse 5, for each one should carry their own load. Nevertheless, the one who receives instruction in the word should share all good things with their instructor. Now, you might be a little confused because you read that and you think, well, just a second ago, he said we should carry each other's burdens. And now he says you should carry your own. I mean, what's he talking about? This is a little bit of a weakness of where the words get translated, okay? In the first example, he's talking about a load so big, so heavy, no one person could carry it. So, about 10 days ago, my family and I went on vacation. It was me, my 2 daughters, and my wife. 10 days. And so we had to pack and bring luggage for 4 people for 10 days. Now, they did a pretty good job, but it's still 3 women, right? Okay, so there's some luggage here. And we go to the airport, and how ridiculous would it seem if I carried all of their luggage, all of their carry-ons, all of their personal items, and tried to carry it all myself while they walked along carrying nothing? Now, some of you are shaking your head like, well, yeah, that's what it should be. Yeah, okay. I couldn't do it. It wouldn't happen, right? That makes no sense, and that's what Paul's saying. He's like, when you see somebody that's so loaded down, there's no way they can handle it. You go and help them because you're responsible to each other. But you're also accountable. So when you can do for yourself, when you can carry it yourself, you should. Don't look to other people to do what you should do. See, when it comes to being responsible, we check them out. When it comes to being accountable, you need to check yourself. And if you remember the 80s rap lyrics, check yourself before you wreck yourself. But you have to actually pay attention to what am I doing? What's going on in my life? How am I? And this is hard. He's in essence saying, look in the mirror. Okay? How you doing? We're pretty good at looking in the mirror as long as we control the frame, right? If I can construct the frame and how I see myself, I look pretty good. But am I willing to just look in the mirror? I don't know if any of you had photographs taken and you know, you go to a professional photographer and they take your picture and they have you pose and they do all this stuff, which they're great. I don't have anything against photographers or whatever. But here's my little tiny concern. When you go and you get your pictures taken and then you get the pictures back, those pictures never happened. They never happened because they've all been photoshopped and the wrinkles have been taken out and the blemishes and they've changed everything and your teeth are whiter and everything. I was like, that person never existed. But in that frame, in that picture, it's like, okay, that's who we are. But we're not. And that's what Paul is saying. Don't go for the Photoshop version. You need to look in the mirror. You need to be accountable. Nobody can do this for you. And 2 things are going to happen when you look in the mirror. And one of them is actually really, really good. Actually, they're both really good. One of them is super positive. The first thing that happens when you look in the mirror is you see your progress. You do. When you look at yourself today, if you're a follower of Jesus, my hope is that you can look back and see that 3 months ago, 6 months ago, a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I'm a different person than I was then. I'm more patient. My anger doesn't flare like it used to. My inner critic that used to beat me up and make me feel guilty is quieted down. I'm a better husband. I'm a better mom. Whatever it might be, you should be able to see the progress that you've made, and you should celebrate that. That is a good thing. You should be able to enjoy what God's done in your life and how he's brought about changes. Those are super important things. And by the way, go ahead and share that with the people that have been pouring into you. Let them know, hey, your example, hey, what you taught me, what you've shown me, the life you've used and how you've invested in me has made a difference for me. So you see your progress, but the other thing you see, and this one you're tempted to think is a negative, but it's not, is you see your weakness. When you look in the mirror and you decide that I'm going to be accountable, you see your weakness. But let me tell you why that's not as bad as you might think it is. When you see your weakness, one of the things it does is it reminds you, I can't do this by myself. I have to rely on someone. I can't do this alone. And the Bible tells us that if you're a follower of Jesus, one of the things that God does is he says his strength is perfected in our weakness. That when I am willing to say, God, I need your help here. I can't do this. I'm not good at this. I struggle with this. This is a problem for me. That God's strength is perfected in that. You learn to be dependent on him when you can't be patient and he brings you patience. When you can't calm down and he brings you peace. God, this is a weakness in my life. I see it, I name it, I admit it, and I need your help. And he comes and he helps. That's why it's good to see your weakness. The other reason it's good to see your weakness, it softens you. Remember how I talked about earlier that we're responsible and sometimes it's going to be your job to come to me or to go to somebody else and gently restore and reset and help heal what's going on in their life. The way you get that gentle is by reminding yourself that, I got some stuff too. I got some places. I got some rough spots. And so because I know that, I'm not coming at you as though I've got it all figured out. I'm not coming at you telling you, why don't you do better? I'm coming to you gently to restore and to heal. You see, we are responsible, and I'm accountable, and so are you. But there's one more piece to this puzzle that Paul lays out for his family, for his brothers and sisters, for those ones that he has bled with and cried for and prayed over, that he feels bonded to. He's telling them, be responsible, take care of each other, be accountable, pay attention to what's going on in your life. And the last thing he says is you need to confirm the direction. Look at verse 7. He says, you need to confirm the direction of your life because it's so easy to move in the wrong direction. It's so easy to get off track. He says it this way, verse 7, do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. Whoever sows to please their flesh from the flesh will reap destruction. Whoever sows to please the Spirit from the Spirit will reap eternal life. And just hold your finger there. Just stop there for a second. These are farming terms. If you're like reaping and sowing, what is he talking about? This is stuff, it makes so much sense when you take just a minute. Reaping and sowing. What you do now shows up later. The financial decisions you make now show up later. The health decisions you make now show up later. The relationship decisions that you make now show up later. We get this. We know this. We're adults. We understand. Yeah, what you do today impacts, influences what happens tomorrow. And he's saying it's no different, and it's actually even more important when it comes to your spiritual life. What is your focus? Where are you putting your time, energy, attention? Whatever it is that you're focusing on, that's what's going to be the result. So if you're putting your time, energy, attention, and focus on Jesus, there's going to be a result. If you're putting it on something else, there's going to be a different result. And Paul very adamantly would say, if your desire is life, the life that God created you to live, if your desire is to walk with him, then it's obvious where your focus needs to be. Because if your focus is on your career or your family or how much money you can make or the experiences you have or the entertainment that you're worried about or all the other things and accolades and notice that you can get from other people, if you put your focus on that, you're going to reap something, but you're not going to reap life. And he's actually pretty bold about it. He says you can't fool God. You might fool everybody else. You might even fool yourself. That's why he says, don't be deceived. But you can't fool God. But you can become a fool by ignoring God. You see, I'm going to put a fine point on this. Jesus is not interested in being your sidekick. Jesus is not interested in being the opening act of your life concert. Jesus insists on being the main attraction. He's stage center all the time. And you might be tempted to think, well, that seems a little arrogant. It seems a little demanding. I mean, is this just, okay, I got to follow Jesus and do what he says, and if he's not in the middle of everything, then I'm a loser. I mean, is that what you're saying? No. You know why Jesus wants to be the main attraction? You know why he wants to be the focus, the point, the energy, the effort, all of your investment is in him? You know why that's true? Because he knows something. You're never going to have the life that he created you to have with anything else at the center. And it's not because Jesus is demanding or it's because he's like a 5-year-old that always has to have attention. It's actually because he loves you so much, he doesn't want you to settle for less. See, that's the goodness of God. That is grace. That's why he tells us, check your direction. Don't fool yourself. Don't try to fool everybody else. Put your time, put your energy, put your attention on following him. Because nothing else can take its place. And when you do, something incredible happens. Pastor Corey talked about this last week or 2 weeks ago. Your life starts to look very different. And it's not because you try harder. It's because of what he does in you. You see, it's not long when he becomes your focus. It's not long before people notice some things coming out of you. And again, it's not because you're trying hard. It's just because it's a natural process of what happens when you focus on Christ. Pretty soon, people know you for being loving and joyful and peaceful. And it seems so natural. It's like apples on an apple tree. Well, of course. I mean, that's just how it works. And you're patient and you're kind and you're good. And again, nobody's surprised. It's like finding grapes on a grapevine. You're like, well, yeah, that's what grapevines do. That's what people do who follow Jesus like this. They're faithful. They're gentle. They seem to be under control. It's like the banana tree with bananas on it, of course. See, that's what you reap when he becomes the focus. But Paul's not done. Look at verse 9. He says it this way. He says, let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. Therefore, as we have opportunity, let us do good to all people, especially to those who belong to the family of believers. See, sometimes we think about doing things for other people, and it's easy, and I do this all the time. Sometimes we do it for a lot of reasons. It makes me look better, makes me feel good about myself. It's kind of embarrassing if I don't. Everybody else is, so I guess I should too. It's like they try to shame you at the cash register. Do you want to donate your change to whatever? Like, no, I do not. There's all these different reasons why we try to do good or people want us to do good. And sometimes our motivations are just as messed up and mixed up as everybody else's. But if we're responsible and I'm accountable and I've checked the direction of my life and I've put my focus on him, you know what happens? I don't have a choice. I do good. But it's not because I have to earn something. It's not because I'm under some kind of weird obligation. See, we don't do good to win God's favor. We do good because we have God's favor. Because we're a family. Because we're accountable. Because the direction of our life is clear. It's easy for us to do good. Now, I don't know all the details of your life. I'm sure that you do good in a lot of places, at home, at school, at work, your neighborhood, wherever you might go. But I do know something about here. And I know that we have some incredible people here that show us this path all the time. And they're not trying to earn anything, and they're not doing it just to make themselves feel better. It is this process. They have God's favor on their life, and they can't do anything else. And so it's happening even right now as we speak in our preschool, in our children's area, in our junior high and high school area. There are people that are pouring their lives into the next generation because they feel responsible, because they're accountable, and because the direction of their life has pushed them in that direction because God has worked in their heart and changed them, and he is their focus, and they can't help it. They can't help but do good. They can't help but invest in other people. There are small group leaders right here in our church that gather together every week with their small group, and they are reading the word, and they are studying, and they are praying with people, and they're trying to help people build relationships, and they're doing life together because it's who they are. That's the direction of their life. And our mission team, oh my goodness, our mission team, we are helping kids at the school next door, and we are helping orphans overseas because we want to do good. Because we care about each other and we care about the people around us. That's what it means to do good. And I got to tell you, I'm so excited. I am so excited in a very strange way because you have baggage in your life. And you know people that have a ton of baggage in their life. And you're probably picturing their face right now, right? Yeah, they don't know who they are. Their identity's all screwed up. They're confused about everything, or they're always burdened by guilt, or they're always comparing themselves. They're always trying to outdo everybody else. You can think of somebody in your life that has baggage. And here, let me tell you why I'm excited. You have the answer. You have the answer. The answer to their messed up marriage is not being nice on Thursday night date night. It's being restored. The answer to their broken relationship with their brother isn't them sitting down at the table and eating dinner together and pretending like everything is fine. It's being restored. The answer to your struggle, to the people that you don't understand and don't feel like you can get along with, isn't plastering on a smile. It's being restored. We have the answer. The answer to every one of those situations is life in Christ. That's why I'm excited. Yes, the problems are big, but the answer is bigger than the problems. And we have an opportunity to love each other, to be responsible for each other, to be accountable to each other, to make sure our life is moving in the right direction. And as we do that, things are going to flow out of our life that have an impact and help restore others. See, that's why we can say, and we say it all the time, that God is for us. He's on our side. He's not against you. And because God is for us as a church, Mountain Ridge, we can turn around and look at everybody else and say, you know what, Mountain Ridge is for you too. We're a place for you to belong, and we are on your side. We are for you. This is a place you can come and belong. This is a place you can come and work out what you believe. And this is a place where you can become who God created you to be. That's why I'm excited. Being responsible and being accountable are actually really great opportunities. Let's pray together.